All right, let's get right into it. China's economy has a really weird problem. It might actually be too successful. And believe it or not, that very success, it's pushing the entire world right to the brink of a massive trade war.
You know, it all starts with something that sounds amazing. In China, pretty much everything you can think of, milk, TVs, you name it, just keeps getting cheaper, day after day.
And then, to make things even weirder, their infrastructure is just world-class. I mean, the high-speed trains, they're almost too fast.
And the airports? Spotless. Now look, if you're living somewhere with crumbling roads and prices going up all the time, this probably sounds like a dream, right? But here's the twist. It's actually a symptom of a huge underlying economic problem.
So how in the world can all this good stuff, cheap groceries, incredible trains, be a sign that something is fundamentally broken? Well, to figure that out, we've got to trace it all the way back to the source.
And that brings us to what you could call the China paradox. From the outside, everything looks fantastic. But dig a little deeper, and you find there's a massive hidden cost to this whole model.
So, to really get a handle on that cost, we need to peel back the layers on how China built its unbelievable export machine. It's not just the stuff you see on the surface. It's really all about a carefully crafted, artificial advantage.
Okay, so most of us know the usual suspects when we think about China's manufacturing power, right? You've got that huge supply of low-cost labor and, of course, the big, obvious government subsidies. We're talking cheap loans, tax breaks for key industries. But honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
The real secret sauce is in the indirect subsidies. See, China makes it cheaper to produce stuff by doing a few key things. Cutting worker benefits like pensions, banning independent unions, kind of looking the other way on environmental rules, and keeping its currency artificially low. Every single one of those decisions, it's like a hidden subsidy for its companies.
Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine a bottle of French wine. Its advantage is natural, right? It comes from the unique soil, the perfect climate. It's like creating value out of thin air. Now compare that to a Chinese-made bicycle. Its advantage is totally artificial. It's not from nature. It's built on a mountain of government subsidies that just force the production cost way, way down.
But here's the thing about an artificial advantage. It's not free. So if the companies aren't footing the full bill, who is?
And this is a point that Michael Pettis, a finance professor at Peking University, makes all the time. He says, look, these subsidies are not free. Someone, somewhere, has to pay for all these shortcuts and corporate freebies.
And the answer is surprisingly simple, and frankly, pretty grim. The cost gets transferred from the corporations straight to the wallets of ordinary Chinese families. They're the ones who pay the price, with lower wages, longer hours, and a weaker social safety net.
Think about it. When you don't have strong pensions or unemployment insurance to fall back on, what do? You save. And Chinese families are forced to save a lot. Get this, they put away nearly half of their income. Compare that to 23% in France or about 19% in the US. This isn't just being frugal. It's a sign of profound economic insecurity.
And that leads us right to the core problem. When everyone is forced to save that much money, they just can't spend it. They're not going out to restaurants, buying cars, or taking vacations, and that creates the central flaw in China's entire economic model. There's just not enough domestic spending.
You know, this whole model, being dependent on exports, it works great as long as the rest of the world is buying all your stuff. But what happens when the party stops? When global demand suddenly dries up? Well, the entire engine just starts to sputter and stall.
The crazy thing is, Beijing has known this was a problem for years. They were actually trying to pivot, trying to get their own people to spend more. But then the pandemic hit. Suddenly, everyone in the West was stuck at home, buying up tons of Chinese-made electronics and furniture, which just poured fuel on the old export fire. Then, when China's lockdowns finally ended, everyone expected this huge wave of revenge spending from Chinese consumers. But it just never came.
So why did the engine stall? Well, because the country's fundamental economic pillars are starting to crack. The population is actually shrinking. The infamous housing market bubble is bursting. Youth unemployment is hitting record highs. And even salaries for white-collar workers are falling. People just don't have the confidence or the cash to spend.
So now Beijing is in a really tight spot. How do you keep the economy growing when your main engine, your own consumers, is broken? The path they seem to be choosing, well, it's putting them on a direct collision course with the rest of the world.
Essentially, Beijing is at a fork in the road. There's the hard way and there's the easy way. The hard way is to do a complete overhaul of the economy.
We're talking about building a real social safety net, empowering consumers, and shifting wealth back to households. That's incredibly difficult and politically dangerous. Then there's the easy way. Just take all the extra stuff your own people can't afford to buy and dump it on the rest of the world. In other words, export your domestic problems.
And all signs point to Beijing choosing the easy way out. They are pouring all of that excess industrial power into a few key areas: electric cars, batteries, solar panels, and they're gearing up to flood the global market.
And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, let's just look at cars. China can build about 40 million cars a year, but its own people only buy between 20 and 25 million. That leaves a potential surplus of 15 to 20 million cars every single year. That is more than the entire US car market in a good year. It's just a staggering number.
And right there, that's the collision. There's no way the US and Europe can or will just sit back and absorb an avalanche of cheap, subsidized goods in an industry as critical as cars. I mean, think about it. If the world got worked up over cheap steel or solar panels, imagine the firestorm over millions of electric vehicles.
This is what inevitably sparks a trade war. It's when countries start throwing up barriers, like taxes or tariffs, to protect their own industries from what they see as totally unfair, state-subsidized competition.
So that's where things stand. China is trying to solve its deep domestic economic problems by essentially exporting them. A tidal wave of subsidized cars, batteries, and solar panels is building. It's heading straight for the rest of the world. And really, the only question left is, what happens when it makes landfall?